When you think of bees, what is the first thing that comes to mind? I bet it's honey. Let's see if at the end of this video, your perception on bees will change. The Apis mellifera, also known as the honeybee, is the most familiar bee out of the 20,000 known species of bees. This species is valuable for the production of honey, beeswax, royal jelly, propolis, and crop pollination. Honeybees are effective pollinators because they are social and they are able to pollinate a wide range of flowers. Bees travel more than 2 kilometers to collect nectar and pollen. This species is indigenous to Asia, Europe, and Africa and was introduced to the Western Hemisphere during European colonization. However, indigenous stingless bees are found in Central America, the Caribbean, and other parts of the tropics. This table, taken from Solomon 2010, shows the presence of different bee species on different islands in the Caribbean. It shows that in 1979, the Africanized bees came into Trinidad and not in Tobago, and European bees were introduced to Tobago in 1918. The role of bees has little recognition, although it is a very important one. In most countries, the fundamental duty of bees, which is pollination, is hardly recognized. According to Potts et al. 2010, pollinators are an essential component to global biodiversity, where they provide fundamental ecosystem services to crops and wild plants. Evidence shows that there is a correlation between the decline in pollinators and their dependent plants. It is estimated by the Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO) that 71 of the 100 crop species that supply 90% of food throughout the world are pollinated by bees. Therefore, a decline in pollinators can cause a loss in pollination, which can have economic and ecological impacts by disrupting the stability of the ecosystem, production of crops, food security, and maintaining the diversity of wild plants. Beekeeping or apiculture is the management of bees in man-made hives which are kept in apiaries. According to Bradbury 2009, the resources needed for bees and apiculture are provided by forests, while at the same time bees are essential to forests. Beekeeping is a good way of generating income using natural resources without depleting them and contributing to the maintenance of biodiversity. Despite their intrinsic and instrumental values, bees are being threatened throughout the world. Some threats to bees are the use of agrochemicals, habitat loss and fragmentation, pathogens, climate change, and alien species. According to Eisen et al. 2008, evidence shows that there is a decline in pollinators due to degradation of the environment. Humans impact the environment through habitat degradation and fragmentation, which disturb pollinators as well as the plants they target. This can cause a decline and scarcity in the sources of food for pollinators. Some pollinators require habitats that are undisturbed for roosting, foraging, and nesting. Additionally, ecosystems that are unhealthy can promote parasite development in wild and managed pollinators. According to the United Nations Environment Programme (UNEP) 2010, globally, the most severe threat to beekeeping is the Varroa destructor, a parasitic mite. It was discovered in 1904 in the southeastern part of Asia and is currently found in many parts of the world. This invasive species changed the hosts from A. serrana to A. mellifera. Viral diseases and bacteria can be spread by this parasite. The colony of honeybees is infested by this mite, and it sucks the blood of honeybees and their brood, which weakens them and shortens their lifespan. Broods that are emerging may have missing legs or wings. Other diseases which pose as major threats are the American fall brood, which have a spore that stays infectious for more than 35 years and can tolerate cold, heat, humidity, and draft, and the European fall brood, which is non-spore forming and has a less severe impact on the colony than the American fall brood. Beekeeping in Tobago dates as far back as 1918, and the first registered apiary was in 1938. Up until the year 2000, there had been no reports of bee disease on the island. In the year 2000, Varroa destructor, the honeybee mite, was found in Tobago. Within 3 months, of the 649 colonies on the island, 35% were lost. Just when there was about full recovery from the mite by November 2003, there was another outbreak of the bee disease, which further threatened to put an end to beekeeping on the island. Firstly, it was thought to be the European fall brood disease, but was later confirmed to be an outbreak of parasitic mite syndrome, which is a disease complex associated with the Varroa mite. This resulted in a 52% decline in the number of colonies between November 2003 and November 2004. In an interview with Mr. Gladstone Solomon, President of the Tobago Apiary Society, he highlighted that the presence of the Varroa mite on the island was in fact identified by a group of beekeepers from the United Kingdom who were participating in a beekeeper's safari to Trinidad and Tobago, and later confirmed by the Central Science Laboratory in the UK based on a specimen of suspected brood sent to them for analysis by the Tobago Apiary Society. The visiting team gave timely advice on management of the outbreak. Additionally, the Tobago Apiary Society organized the importation of apiston strips to treat all colonies on the island. These responses minimized the potential loss of colonies to the extent that some recovery was seen within a year. In that regard, according to Mr. Solomon, the management of the first outbreak after the mite was identified was particularly effective and could have been even more so if the presence of the mite was identified earlier. He also stated that the management of the second outbreak was a more complicated issue as the initial diagnosis of the disease proved to be complex and inconclusive undertaking, even with the assistance of a beekeeping consultant from the UK who was on holiday on the island at the time. The consultant conducted a workshop on the various diseases affecting honeybees and undertook extensive field exercises to get a full understanding of the status of beekeeping on the island. More strips were imported to treat colonies as well as the prescribed antibiotics to treat for the European fall brood. It should be noted too that this outbreak occurred during the wettest period of the year, a time when colonies are particularly vulnerable. Additionally, 2 batches of 150 queens each, which were marketed as being Varroa resistant, were imported between December 2004 and December 2006. Mr. Solomon also highlighted that all things considered, the management response to this outbreak was also quite effective, notwithstanding the percentage loss of colonies. Without the input of the consultant, it was very likely that all the colonies on the island could have been lost, as happened in St. Vincent when that island had similar disease challenges. He went on to say that the major advantage of the management of the both outbreaks was the knowledge transfer that occurred on each occasion. The major disadvantage of the management of the first outbreak was that the imported queen bees may not have fully adapted to the weather conditions in Trinidad and Tobago, a factor that may have exacerbated circumstances that precipitated the second outbreak. Even so, the imported bees were more gentle and less challenging to manage than the honeybees on the islands before they were imported. In that regard, this turned out to be an advantage, as the current stock of bees on the island are less aggressive than those before the importation. No disadvantages could be identified in the management system used with the second outbreak. Overall, in terms of ranking threats to beekeeping on the island, the problems that topped the list for the beekeepers were varroa mite, hunting ants which go after the bees' larvae and injure the bees, and the wax moth which lay their eggs in the honeycomb cells, resulting in severe damage to the cells during metamorphosis. Mr. Solomon also raised the issue that there is not much beekeepers on the southwestern end of the island, as there was before, due mainly to urbanization in the area, reducing foraging area for the bees. Several beekeepers who reared in the southwest had to relocate their apiaries because of the increasing density of built infrastructure. According to Solomon, the beekeeping environment is quite fragile due to threats not only from pests and diseases, but also slash and burn agriculture, fogging, which is the spraying of insecticide to eradicate mosquitoes, creeping urbanization, and untamed bushfires. However, with the extent of vegetation cover on the island being relatively high, the ethos which promotes clean, green, safe and serene, and the tendency of farmers on the island to practice sustainable agriculture all imply that the island is well inclined to support a beekeeping subsector that is sustainable. The probability of Africanized bees arriving in Tobago is high, so measures must be put in place to address this potential stressor to beekeeping on the island. These bees are able to displace the European ones and can pose a threat to the safety of the public. Keeping the ban on the importation of honey into Trinidad and Tobago can also prevent the spread of other pests and diseases. For example, the American foul brood is a deadly bee disease which can be transmitted by bees if they ingest honey that contains the bacterial spores that cause the disease. Training for beekeepers in the management of pests and diseases, bee health, and nutrition will help to promote healthy bees, thus increasing the number of bees on the island. Further education on bees and beekeeping should be given to bring about public awareness. Bees are very important in ecosystems, and such, their existence should not be overlooked. So, the honeybees. Is it only about the honey?